uprightness. These are the core values which we proudly represent. My name is Amor, and let's take on this brief journey and discover Caraga State University.
In its journey towards excellence, Caraga State University has carved several milestones along the way. These milestones represent our accomplishments as an institution of higher learning in Caraga region. We are one of the only 5 SUCs in Mindanao and one of the only 20 SUCs in the entire country that has been awarded SUC Level 4 based on CHED, DBM, and PASOK evaluation.
Mindanao program that aims to conduct Geo-informatics-based approaches for the systematic assessment of flooding in the different watersheds of Caraga region. Fab Lab is an interdisciplinary space for innovation where anyone can make almost anything. The laboratory was established to inspire entrepreneurs and artists to turn their ideas into new products and prototypes by providing access to an array of advanced, flexible digital manufacturing tools. Navigatu is Caraga State University's very own technology business incubator funded by the Department of Science and Technology, Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Development, together with the Department of Trade and Industry. Virtual Learning Facility is a physical space in Caraga State University where the smart room with smart gadgets and display are using augmented reality interfaces. The Caraga State University PhilLiDAR 1 project, also called as Flood Hazard Mapping of the Philippines using light detection and ranging, Caraga region.
Today, even as a young educational institution, Caraga State University continues its endeavor for excellence in instruction, research, extension, and production as it assumes its role for regional and national development. In pursuit of academic excellence, Caraga State University currently offers programs in the College of Engineering and Geosciences, College of Computing and Information Sciences, College of Forestry and Environmental Science, College of Agriculture and Agro-Industries, College of Arts and Sciences, and College of Education, all of which are accredited by the Accrediting Agency of Chartered Colleges and Universities in the Philippines. Bachelor of Science in Mining Engineering is a multifaceted discipline that offers a broad range of career opportunities in various technical areas: mining and mineral resource development operation and management, government service, academe, mine environmental enhancement services, mine research and development, mining consultancy services, sales and marketing jobs in mining, and oil and energy industry. Bachelor of Science in Geodetic Engineering program are expected to be able to execute control surveys, mineral, hydrographic, and topographic surveys, photogrammetric surveys, gravimetric surveys, and astronomical observations. Possible occupations include geodetic engineer or surveyor, photogrammetrist, cartographer, GIS specialist, remote sensing specialist, academician, consultancy, government technical service, quality assurance engineer, project manager, hydrographer, information systems analyst, assessor, realtor, and appraiser. Bachelor of Science in Electronics and Communications Engineering. Applications in this field are in biomedical, communications, industrial control, analytical instruments, image processing, telecommunications, information and communications technologies, consumer electronics, computer networks, and automation. Such applications vary from digital, analog, microprocessor-based, or very large-scale integrated circuits. The Bachelor of Science in Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering field of specializations include AV Machinery and Power Engineering, AV Structures and Environment Engineering, AV Land and Water Resources, AV Process Engineering. Possible career opportunities: research, academia, construction firms and industry, government agencies and offices, consultancy, and agricultural and bioprocessing plants. The Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, Bachelor of Science in Information Technology, and Bachelor of Science in Information System. Possible occupations: a software engineer, a system software developer, research and development computing professional, application software developer, a computer programmer, a systems analyst, data analyst, quality assurance specialist, software support specialist, and academicians. The College of Education is a college and a university that provides quality and relevant teacher education programs, such as the Bachelor of Elementary Education, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics, and Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Biology. Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Bachelor in Agricultural Technology
is a 4-year program designed to provide students with the technical knowledge in crop raising, agricultural chemicals, fertilizers, integrated pest management, seed conditioning and technology, and other areas related to production and quality control in the food and fiber industry. Other careers in this profession includes crop scientist, horticulturist, agronomist, plant pathologist, plant breeder, and even an agricultural economist.
The Bachelor of Science in Agroforestry, Bachelor of Science in Forestry, Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science. Possible careers: technical consultants, supervisors, researchers, environmental planning and design, waste and environmental assessment, and environmental policy. Bachelor of Science in Biology. Bachelor of Science in Biology qualifies one to work as a teaching assistant in a college or university, with additional courses in education and passing of the licensure examination for teachers. A Bachelor of Science in Biology graduate can also be employed as a high school biology teacher. Also, graduates of the program can pursue or undertake postgraduate education in biology and allied fields. Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. This program can work in different laboratories, such as in mining laboratories, analytical laboratories, and crime laboratories, such as a forensic chemist. Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Bachelor of Science in Applied Mathematics. Thus, any graduate of the department can fit to, but not limited to, the following jobs: a teacher, researcher, statistician, financial analyst, and an economic consultant. Bachelor of Arts in Sociology offers solutions to social issues to enhance people's welfare. The possible jobs are a researcher, community relations officer, teacher, and a project development officer. Bachelor of Science in Social Work. This program is a unique profession rich with meaning, action, and the power to make a difference. The following jobs are medical social work, community organizing and social work, forensic social work, and other fields.
Bachelor of Science in Physics is a 4-year course study. Possible jobs include a researcher, analyst, or consultant, teaching, advanced studies, and other fields. Do you have a fascination for the human mind and wish to gain useful insights to apply to daily life? Acquire wide career options and opportunities. Bachelor of Science in Psychology is the program for you. A career in psychology will take you to the field as a psychometrician, counselor, and a psychologist.
ipakita na kanina kita iusahon ta kalihok ang kultura ipadayon ta ha kanina
Good day, everyone. I hope you're all doing well and safe. And please get ready since a few seconds from now, the webinar is about to start. Good afternoon to all. I'm Art Kauba, your host and moderator again for this event, and welcome to the second part of this webinar entitled #Resist COVID-19, a two-part webinar on responsive and intelligent suppression of COVID-19 and its societal impacts using spatial technologies, organized by SciTech Forward Forum 2020 and the Caraga Center for Geo-informatics. I am glad that we have received a lot of positive feedbacks from our participants during the first part of the webinar. And the same with the first part, this webinar is also recorded and we are streaming live on Facebook at the SciTech Forward Forum FB page. To all our FB Live participants there, please like and share our live stream and don't forget to include the following hashtags: #resist COVID-19, #SciTech Forward 2020, #navigating the new normal, #padayon sa paglambo, #bugsay pa more. Right, at this point, let me acknowledge the virtual presence of the Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Extension of Caraga State University, Dr. Rowena P. Varela, the Dean of the College of Engineering and Geosciences, Engineer Miriam M. Santillan, the Chairperson of the CSU Department of Geodetic Engineering, Engineer Lori Chris S. Asube, the Director of Caraga Center for Geo-informatics, Engineer Jojin R. Santillan.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Our speakers and of course participants, good afternoon to all of you. So I guess for the meantime, let me check if our participants or if you are ready for today's webinar. So please utilize the chat box here and share to us your name, affiliation or organization, and expectation for today's webinar. So come on guys, so please participate and I will read your answers later. All right, so while waiting for your answers, let's have a recap about what happened in the previous webinar. Okay, so the webinar started off with an invocation. Opening message was delivered by Engineer Jojin Santillan, and he gave a short background about Caraga Center for Geo-informatics, or CCGeo, which is the organizer of this event. He also emphasized the goals of this webinar. According to Engineer Santillan, with the current situation we are all facing right now, the COVID-19 pandemic, CCGeo shall find a way to continue providing timely and relevant information to the public. Thus, this webinar is conducted and entitled Responsive and Intelligent Suppression of COVID-19 and its Societal Impacts Using Spatial Technologies, or RESIST COVID-19, and its goal is to highlight spatial technologies like satellite sensing, GNSS, and GIS, particularly in how it is helping us resist COVID-19. Afterwards, the welcome message was given by the University President, Dr. Anthony M. Pinaso. Dr. Pinaso put emphasis on the critical role of science, technology, and innovation to the achievement of sustainable development and to addressing the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And after his message, we then started the talks faster by three distinguished speakers from the Ateneo de Manila University. The three speakers were introduced by the Dean, Engineer Miriam M. Santillan. Right, so the first topic was discussed by Dr. Maria Regina Justina E. Estuar, the Executive Director of Ateneo Center for Computing and Competencies Research, or ACRE, of the Ateneo de Manila University, and the project leader of FASTER. In her talk, Dr. Estuar introduced FASTER, or Feasibility Analysis on Syndromic Surveillance using Spatiotemporal Epidemiological Modeler. FASTER is a scenario-based disease modeling and surveillance platform that has been designed to use localized data for early detection and prevention of spread of diseases. The platform has been built to accommodate different data sources, produce several models, and provide a dashboard for visualization of information. Today, FASTER boasts of a compilation of analytical tools that have been designed for the different phases of the COVID-19 pandemic. After the talk of Dr. Istuar, the second topic followed, and it was about identifying barangay hotspots using the spatial autocorrelation and infection rates by Mr. Lian Franzel Yao of the Department of Mathematics, Ateneo de Manila University. In his talk, Mr. Yao discussed about spatial autocorrelation, a statistic that can be used for localized surveillance of COVID-19. This tool provides insight on the classification of barangays based on the clustering of high infection rate areas or hotspots, low infection rate areas or cold spots, and outliers. The statistic used to provide these classifications is called the local Moran's eye, which can be interpreted as the correlation of incidences between an area and its neighbors. The added contribution of this metric is that it provides a simple metric that can be used to monitor the interaction of incidences between localized areas. And the last topic during the Part 1 webinar was about determining barangay relative risk, a Bayesian spatio-temporal analysis of COVID-19 cases in the Philippines by Mr. Daniel Joseph P. Benito of the Department of Mathematics, Ateneo de Manila University. During his talk, Mr. Benito emphasized that key measures for mitigating the spread of COVID-19 have grown increasingly localized. It is therefore important for policymakers to understand variations in disease burdens at more fine-grained scales, which national models may not provide. This presentation discussed a Bayesian spatio-temporal model for capturing local level dynamics of COVID-19 transmission. Using data on confirmed cases, the model probabilistically quantifies the relative risk of barangays. Model results further distinguish between spatial and temporal trends in disease spread. Implications for barangay level COVID-19 monitoring were also discussed by Mr. Benito. And after the three talks, it was then followed by the question and answer session and panel discussion. The speakers enthusiastically answered the questions from the participants, and Dr. Wena P. Varela also delivered her insights about the topics discussed by the speakers. And the first part of the webinar has ended successfully. Right, so today is the second part, and I hope this will be another great day for us to learn, as we will have two exciting talks from our speakers about Trans Plus and Gideon. So do we now have comments from our participants? So do we have participants here? So we have 70 attendees via Zoom. So can you please share to us your name, your affiliation or organization, and your expectation for today's webinar? Anyone? So I hope everyone will participate to today's webinar. Okay, so maybe you are still thinking about your expectation for today's webinar. Okay, so before we get started with our first topic, so I would like to present with you the following webinar. Right, so participants other than the host, speakers, and moderator are muted. You may say hello to speakers and fellow attendees in the chat box and make your messages short and relevant. Questions for the speakers are most welcome through the Q&A box and not in the chat box. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's speakers by typing your questions into the Q&A tab. You may state your name and affiliation, or you can send the question anonymously. Please indicate to whom the question is for. You may send in your question at any time during the presentation. We will collect this data, we will collect these questions and address them during the question and answer session and panel discussion. Next is stay focused, avoid multitasking. We encourage you to listen attentively and stay with us until the end of the talks. And fill out the attendance form during the start of the webinar and online evaluation form after the webinar. The online evaluation form can be accessed after the webinar. Electronic certificate of participation for this webinar part will be given to participants who have registered, fully attended the webinar either via Zoom or FB Live, and have accomplished the online evaluation form. Make sure that you entered the correct name and email, since certificates will be emailed to the registered email address used in the forms. Okay, so it is written here in the chat box, the attendance form. Okay, so again, everyone, this webinar is recorded and we are streaming live on Facebook at the SciTech for Dev Forum at the page. Thus, if you want to watch this webinar again or catch the moments you've missed, visit the SciTech for Dev Forum Facebook page and feel free to view the recorded video on that page. And once again, to all our FB Live participants, please like and share our live stream. And don't forget to include the following hashtags: hashtag resist COVID-19, hashtag SciTech for the 2020, hashtag navigating the new normal, hashtag padayan sa paglambo, hashtag bugsay pa more. Okay, so participants, hi. So you'll hear some participants now who extend their greetings. Thank you everyone for your participation for today's webinar. And are you now ready to gain knowledge from our speakers? Can I get an answer from the attendees or from the participants? Are you now ready to gain knowledge from our speakers? Please type yes if you are ready. Okay, so I guess someone has responded. So they are now ready to learn from our two excellent speakers. And I hope also others is eager to learn. So I guess now we can begin. And to introduce the first speaker, may I call in the Dean of the College of Engineering and Geosciences, Engineer Miriam M. Santillan.
Thank you, Art. Thank you, Art, and I am happy to introduce to you our first speaker. Our speaker is currently an assistant professor at the Department of Geodetic Engineering in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She obtained her Master of Science degree in Geomatics Engineering in 2019 with specialization in Geo-informatics and a Bachelor of Science degree in Geodetic Engineering in 2011 from the same university. Prior to joining the faculty of the department for full-time teaching work, she was involved in several research projects, particularly on the use of geospatial technologies for environmental applications. Through collaborations with different scientists and researchers, her team has been developing maps and models for environmental studies, such as water and air quality monitoring using remote sensing and geographic information system technologies. With this, she received the C. Ling Chad Professorial Chair in Engineering in 2019. She was also awarded the Most Outstanding Engineering Instructor Award in the same year. Recently, she spearheaded the Trams Plus project, or the enhanced tracing for allocation of medical supplies. The said project is implemented by the UP Training Center for Applied Geodesy and Photogrammetry, or the UPTCAGP, the research and extension arm of the UP Department of Geodetic Engineering. TRAMS Plus is an online system composed of geographic and tracking information of hospital medical supplies, and is designed to be a tool for effective response and distribution of these supplies. To talk more about the TRAMS Plus project, let us welcome Engineer Rosanne V. Ramos.
Right. Thank you, Dean William, for the very warm introduction. So I'll start my presentation. May I share my screen? Okay, I'll start my presentation by sharing a promotional video of the project, just to give you an overview and context on why we conceptualized and implemented TRAMS project during the COVID-19 crisis.
The continuous increase of COVID-19 cases brought fright to many of us. Anxiety grew when hospitals started publicizing their concerns about the lack of medical supplies. Some of them were left with no choice but to ask and knock on everyone's heart for any amount of help they could get to ensure that frontliners were equipped and safe in battling these viruses. As we continue to stumble upon more challenges, we see more clearly the importance of our health workers and the need for a massive support system. Created for the people, by the people, we present TRAMS, Tracing for Allocation of Medical Supplies.
So the project is conceptualized by faculty members of the Department of Geodetic Engineering, and as Dean William already shared, this was officially implemented by the University of the Philippines, TCAGP. So this is a research and extension arm of our department, wherein I'm a junior faculty member. So this is in response to the call of the Department of Science and Technology, the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy and Emerging Technology, Research and Development, or DOSTP, shared, and became part of the projects delivering geo-information solutions to COVID-19 crisis. So the project operated with shared funding support for 3 months, from May 1 to July 31, 2020, with the primary objective of creating a supporting tool to the DOH, or Department of Health's main tracker, that will aid in proper allocation of medical resources. So our system is heavily reliant on crowdsourced data and verified volunteered information. The technical and administrative work of the project were conducted by a team of faculty mentors from the Department of Geodetic Engineering and from the Institute of Civil Engineering, engineers, and our hardworking student researchers. During the 3-month operation, 4 full-time senior researchers were able to manage the team and come up with the outputs of the project. The roles of the members are generally divided in developing and managing our databases, collection, verification, and processing of spatial data, and other necessary data layers, and development of the web and mobile applications. Our tasks were all delivered online, and coordination with different individuals and organizations were done remotely. The overall picture of our project activities is illustrated in this flowchart. Our project or diagram, our project objectives were met based on these processes. The first two processes, database management and the data verification and updating component, constitute the back-end development of the project, while the third process highlights the front-end development. Database management includes the collection of necessary datasets and organization methods to create single database, either through manual or automated processes. It is very challenging to create a reliable database, so the project collated information from various sources online, such as online mapping portals, resource materials, news and social media messages, and existing databases. It is important to verify this information being published and regular updating on the shared information. Hence, we did the second process on data verification. It enabled us to correctly compute for the needs of each hospital, to show supply levels in a regular interval, and to recommend values for allocation. The last process, online visualization, enabled the project to share and display data in a transparent and comprehensive method. The web and mobile applications can provide information to the public per hospital or per region of interest, and can be extended or customized for other purposes. The development of the TRAMS applications is based on the use of known stack technology, primarily MongoDB, Express and Node.js, and React.js. Online databases were managed on the backend side, while the connectivity of these databases to the TRAMS website is made possible through the Express and Node.js components. The database was managed using MongoDB. The web platform of the project was created, on the other hand, using React.js. This processes enabled the project to compile and share information on medical supply inventories. Processing of data from various sources include back-end preparations, extraction of insights from our datasets, and storing them in a single database. The development of the web platform again follows the known stack, wherein all data handling is done by the back-end, requesting data from the database and sends it to the front-end for publishing. Requests of changes in these datasets are then sent back again to our databases. Similar systems or interfaces such as the data drop of the Department of Health, COVID mapper of a non-government institution, and the ENCOV website of the UP Resilience Institute have limited or no available data or information on hospital supplies and equipment, both mathematically and geospatial publishing. So these interfaces only provided numbers and do not provide geospatial analysis of our medical supplies. The project used these issues or these gaps to address and created the website for TRAMS. Databases again were created from several online resources, or were compiled based on these resources. We gather information from list of licensed hospitals, list of licensed testing centers, and the National Health Facilities Registry database. The management of our spatial database involved collection, verification of contact information, and data shared by our registered users, invitation to several hospitals in the National Capital Region, and eventually to other regions in the Philippines, to share voluntary information to the project. Datasets compiled are initially stored in Google Sheets, and invitations were done using Google Forms, and eventually we created web forms to automate these processes. Hospitals were directly contacted to ensure the credibility and validity of the information. The hospital information and initial supply inventories were compared with existing databases such as the datasets published online by the DOH. This information were verified and updated subsequently based on the responses of the registered users, specifically authorized hospital representatives. The website of the project can be accessed at trams.com.ph. So you can see the main interface. This interface can be visited by several users, non-technical or technical users, and they can view the locations of the hospitals on the map and check specific type and count of supplies reported and updated near real time. Filter functions are available so that user can easily search for the region or points of interest for specific hospitals. Non-technical users can also easily understand this and see the distribution of these hospitals and specific supplies when checking locations per region or per city. This is the interface that is readily available anytime and it is free to access by anyone. Other interfaces, specifically hospital and donation user interface, are accessed only upon registration to the project. When you are a registered user to TRAMS, you will be given login credentials that are unique to you. You can access user interface such as the hospital user interface and donation user interface, depending on your user category or purpose in joining TRAMS. So this is the login page. Put the username and password assigned to you, and click login to access the specific user interface. So in this case, you are shown the hospital user interface wherein you can edit real time the specific supplies and count of your inventories. So if you are a hospital representative and you want to report and update your supply inventories, you can input and edit information through the hospital UI. The hospital UI is easy to navigate and utilize. It has several tabs shown in the left panel. So hospital users can see announcements, track donations from external users and other interested parties, and update medical supplies and laboratory supplies whenever applicable. They can also view logs or history on the changes made to their inventory. Supply levels are categorized into 3: critically low, that is for less than 20% of their supply; low, between 20 to 50% of their supply; and well stocked, that is greater than 50% of their supply count. So this categorization was made to easily communicate to the public the information being shared online by our hospital personnel. So currently, the stocks to use ratio is utilized to show the relationship between the supply and the demand of a certain commodity and provides the level of carryover stock. In this specific case, our medical supplies and laboratory supplies as a percentage of the total demand. The said percentage is used to compute for efficiency and estimate how long inventory supplies would last. The information and type of supplies regularly updated by the users include specific supplies such as PPEs, gloves, masks, and among others. Lab supplies from testing centers are also incorporated in our database based on the request of a specific group who plan to donate testing center laboratory supplies. We have consulted with our colleague from the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research, Dr. Eugene Rex Halao, regarding appropriate calculations of our supply inventories. To determine current inventory levels, we use the reorder point method to calculate a specific time that will indicate when it is best to deliver the supplies. So the formula used composed of two components, the lead time demand and safety stock. So supply levels are calculated based on this formula. The lead time demand tells us how much supplies are needed before the next batch of supplies or donations, and the safety stock is used to protect the hospitals from unexpected occurrences. So as delivery is not instant, hospitals must be well stocked to manage the inflow of patients while waiting for supplies to come. The sum of the two components, lead time demand and safety stock, gives us the reorder point, or again, the time that will indicate when to deliver specific supplies. So another user interface is the donation drives UI, which is very similar to the main website. One difference is that there is an allocation button on each hospital information card, and it has two pages, the allocation page and the donations page. The allocation page includes an allocation table that has the fields date orders, supplier, item, amount, cost, method of payment, benefactor, contact number, ID, and status. Users can edit this table or add components to it or attributes to it. They can also download the table as a CSV or text file. The donation page, on the other hand, includes a table that contains all the donation records. It has the fields name, affiliation, amount, date made, method of payment, contact number, ID, receipt, and status. Records cannot be added through this page, but they can be confirmed and deleted. So we had two partner organizations, the Tinig ng Silangan Incorporated and the Association of Philippine Medical Colleges Student Network, who assisted us and used the user interface to promote the TRAMS project and the system as well. So then if you are interested to donate a specific amount or supply to a certain hospital, you can use this interface to provide and forward donations as long as you are registered to the project. The project also created a mobile version for convenience and easy to use access of the TRAMS application. The current mobile implementation is done through the development of a progressive web application or PWA. So this is a website that acts as a mobile application and runs on a browser. This means that it has the added benefit of not being needed to be downloaded from the App Store or Google Play Store. How it works is that PWAs can save user data to the cache, making it usable offline. So if in case you have no internet connections, you can also download this and use it offline. So as of October 7, after the end of the project, we had 87 hospitals within NCR, a total of 87. 20 of them are in the NCR and the others are from different regions of the Philippines. So at least one hospital have registered in each region. TAMS has been in partnership with these hospitals and they have dedicated their time in updating their supply inventories and published it online. So the TRAMS project, future plans, we welcome future collaborations. If you want to use our outputs, you can collaborate with the project through our training center. So the training center for applied geodesy and photogrammetry. So we'll be maintaining this output or the system, and we can share them to anyone who are interested to use and develop the system or improve the system. We can optimize the use of TRAMS and be able to continue subscription of the software packages and extensions. So the outputs are flexible. We can customize this based on your needs and purposes. Further use of the products may be on data analytics side, such as in forecasting stock amounts or restocking amounts and intervals of use, through time series models and other statistical tools that can be embedded in the system. So hospital information may be analyzed cross-sectionally within a locality or even at national level to guide administrators and decision makers in their resource allocation. Imagine if tracking of supplies is centralized, the monitoring agency and our monitoring agency opts to use trams and have all hospitals in the Philippines registered in the system, it would be easy to determine where resources should be allocated. So the use of geospatial technology is very important in mapping hospitals in need of our medical supplies. Only through maps can we see spatial patterns and relationships that are not visible through tables. So finally, putting things on maps gives a new perspective for users and makes more useful for decision making, monitoring, and planning different programs for society. So the outputs of the project may be extended to these applications, such as supply distribution, disaster humanitarian response, and then even social services. If you have further inquiries about the project and with our training center, the UPTC-AGP, please feel free to contact us through these channels, through email at trams.upd@up.edu.ph or our Facebook page. So thank you for your time in attending this webinar. I would like to extend my gratitude to the Caraga State University, specifically the Caraga Center for Geo-informatics, through Engineer Eugene Santillan, for giving us the opportunity to present our work and share the details of the project. Thank you again to DOST PSHERD and also to the UP College of Engineering and UP Engineering Research Development Foundation for supporting our project. And lastly, to my colleagues in the department and the UP Society of Geodetic Engineering majors for the collective efforts and valuable contributions in this project. So that's all. Good afternoon to all.
Thank you, Engineer Ramos, for that informative talk and also for exerting your effort in developing additional capabilities. Okay, so now you can type your questions in the Q&A tab and the speaker will address it during the question and answer session and panel discussion. So now I encourage you to share with us the things that you've learned from our first speaker, Engineer Ramos. So kindly use the chat box. And as a review on the first topic, so Engineer Ramos discussed to us about TRAMS Plus, and TRAMS Plus is an online needs and allocations tracker for medical supplies of local hospitals in the Philippines, where inventories are directly given by a trusted medical personnel. And also TRAMS is a donation portal where you can easily donate in a click. And TRAMS ensures that your donations are properly allocated to those hospitals in need. And right now, it is TRAMS' objective to provide an avenue to continuously support our country's healthcare system even after the COVID-19 health crisis. Okay, so I hope you have gained knowledge from our first speaker and also reserved your energy for our second topic. Okay, so are you now ready for our second talk? So I hope everyone is now excited for the second topic. And to introduce to us the next speaker, may I call in again the Dean of the College of Engineering and Geosciences, Engineer Miriam M. Santillan.
Thank you, Art. Our next speaker is a senior consultant for social impact of Serolytics Research Services. He is a development sector professional in the fields of human rights, justice reform, democracy, and peace processes. He is a pioneer in utilizing big data for beneficial change in these fields and an advocate for ethical use of data. He is the co-founder of Data Ethics PH, a former Rotary Peace Fellow at Uppsala University, Sweden, and the former European Commission Scholar at the University of Sydney. He is also a Ray Foundation Scholar at the University of Otago, New Zealand, where he is doing his PhD in peace processes and democratic politics. to talk about Gideon, a global awardee for best use of data during the NASA Space Apps COVID-19 challenge. Friends, let us welcome Mr. Nick Tobia.
Engineer Miriam, thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you, Art, for hosting our talk today, no? And Georgine for inviting me to this talk with Caraga State University. Before anything, no, I just want to say that I think I stick out. No, they're mostly engineers from Ateneo, from UP, at least for the speakers that Art had mentioned earlier. So part of the context of this conversation I'm going to have with you is about how people who are both in the technical disciplines, like geodetic engineering, for example, and those who are outside, like myself. No, my background is in human rights, in law, justice reform, democracy. No, and how is it possible that even coming from the outside, we're able to participate with people who are engaged in satellite data. No? So thank you again for having me today. I'm just going to start the presentation now. So let's begin. And I'm just going to present my screen. Okay, so before anything, so my name is Nick Tobia. I'm a consultant at this little tech firm called Zerolytics Research Services. We're an applied analytics company that works in the social impact sector. And for my conversation with you today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our work in social impact as a data firm. Of course, the most important topic would be Project Gideon, or our entry to the May 2020 NASA Space Apps Challenge, representing the Philippines, of course, and we walked away with a global prize for that competition. We'll also talk a little bit about some reflections on participating in the NASA Challenge, and I'll probably also have a little more time to go in depth into the app itself. So I prepared the web app for you to for us to explore together in real time. Okay? And at the end of the session, of course, we'll do question and answer portions with Engineer Roseanne as well. So first things first, our company is a startup firm. I think many of you probably know, especially from the engineering sector, know that now is really the time where we were able to leverage a lot of technology, our access to the internet. And I think the pandemic had shown that we can actually execute a lot of our technical work from anywhere, as long as we do have an internet connection and decent hardware. No? And one of the things that we've learned also about working in the pandemic and working from home as well, no, is that it's quite possible to come up with reasonably intelligent applications, and in this case, not to create applications that can contribute to our preparedness and our response to the COVID pandemic. Social impact data analytics might sound like it's something very new, no? But actually, many years ago, when people weren't talking about big data and data science as a career, no? Like there was no term data scientist. Most of us who work in data analytics, no, we just thought of it as statistics. We just thought of, big data wasn't a term also, but we certainly used very large data sets, no? And my experience in my first foray into big data analytics was really in peace studies. So Engineer Miriam earlier mentioned that I studied in Uppsala University, where I took my degree in peace studies, no? And it was with the Swedes where I realized that a social science discipline like peace studies, peace and conflict studies, was very much into analytics, and the Swedes had invested millions and millions of dollars in building large data sets on conflicts all over the world. No? And it was my time there where I was exposed to this methodology, and I gradually began to assimilate it as well, no? And bring it home as a way of approaching first human rights problems, democracy problems, and eventually justice reform issues. No? Like big data analytics has an application in many, many disciplines. No? And I think Engineer Rosan's demonstration earlier, no, what we were talking about basically is probably supply chain for medicines, for hospitals, no? Which you probably wouldn't think really that it's within the typical domain of health, health issues, but actually something as simple as procurement is foundational when we talk about pandemic responses or epidemic responses. No? So the way that we apply our knowledge of data science and statistics, no, I think the range of fields where it's applicable is wider than we imagine. And there's so many more places where we can explore the application of it. One thing that I wanted to highlight right now is this third bullet point on this slide now, which is what we call data challenges. And probably unlike the FASTER program and the TRAMS project of UP, no, the project I'm going to present to you was created in a sort of different environment. And this is what we call data challenges. So I want to talk a little bit more about this environment. Data challenges, in our view, no, can be summarized in these 4 words. No? These are just rapid crowdsourced ideation processes. And what we mean by crowdsourced is that we try to find solutions by bringing together as many people as possible in a competition setting. And in that setting, we're able to create as many ideas. So the ideation process is sort of incubated in these data challenges so that we can extract some of the best solutions that are created in a very short amount of time. And that's why we refer to them as rapid processes. The data challenges that we competed in for NASA, for example, these are typically 3-day events only. You start on a Friday, and then by Sunday evening, you upload your solution to the NASA website. One of the things that we like to talk about in data challenges as well, no, is unlike traditional R&D processes, these things occur very quickly. They're very cost effective. They're very democratic in the sense that we open it up to a large population. And by large population, we mean people who are not necessarily just in, let's say, university settings, research laboratories. This could include hobbyists. This could include people, especially from the social sciences, who don't think of themselves as data scientists, like probably sociologists and psychologists, no? But all with some sort of skill sets that are useful, especially in analyzing data. So data challenges have begun to be a way also of realizing that there's an interdisciplinary approach to analyzing data, and that we can learn so much from lateral thinking by looking at other disciplines and how they think also about building solutions based on data. In that context, no, not only did we participate in a data challenge, our company had started engaged in trying to run our own data challenges as well. And this is part of our work also in the domain of development studies, development work. We do a lot of engagements with post-conflict reform and reconstruction. And last year, what we did was we launched what we called the Bangsamoro Data Challenge of 2019. In that context, what we were able to do was dig up old data sets from 2016 from the defunct ARMM, or the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. And as you know, ARMM was replaced shortly after by the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. And in that period between the end of ARMM and the ongoing process of rebuilding the BARM with new legislation, new institutions, and new policies, no? We were sitting on idle data sets, meaning to say a large repository of all the data that ARMM had collated and basically gift wrapped for the new government. And some years had passed, of course, where the transition has been a long and challenging process as well. No? And no one has had the time really to analyze this data from the old ARM. And by conducting a data challenge, we were able to invite data professionals and people, of course, who are outside of the data professional scene, to use this data and come up with many solutions that could be useful for governance, that could be useful for the current DTA and the leadership of BARM. That initial data challenge was supported by the Asia Foundation and the Development Academy of the Philippines. But really, it was just this unofficial way of demonstrating that if we had open access to data and we made it accessible to as many people as possible, of course, with a little technical skill set, some background probably in analyzing data, you could probably create some very, very useful solutions in these data challenges. And finally, the last thing on this slide is the BARM Virtual Data Challenge of 2020. After that first foray in 2019, we were able to convince BARM itself to be a little more interested in these data challenges as a way of crowdsourcing new solutions for governance. And with the support now of the BTA, particularly at the very top, at the leadership level of BARM, we were able to launch this virtual data challenge a week ago. It's an ongoing data challenge. It's very unlike, very much distinguished from the way that the NASA challenge is conducted, which is only a 3-day data challenge. In our case, we have a couple of months to get people together, run some solutions, and then present these sometime later in the year. So if you want to know more about the BARM Data Challenge, there's a link here at the bottom of the slide. It's a bit.ly link, so just look for Open Data for BARM. Now, on to Gideon now. In Gideon, as a solution that was responding to COVID, which is very much in line with the theme of our presenters today and over the last few days, what we did was we joined the NASA Data Challenge that addressed the issue of the pandemic and many of the problems that arose because of it. Of course, COVID is a very complex societal problem, and it creates many, many problems. And for us, our approach to this data challenge was to simply zero in on what we thought were the most important research problems, basically, that you'd encounter when you take a look at the news and you think about what it's like to live in a pandemic and what's the way going forward. So these 3 things on this slide were the things that we focused on. First thing, of course, which you probably hear about very often in the news is how do we lift our restrictions on quarantine? So from ECQ to MECQ, GCQ, and all the iterations of our quarantine. These are basically ways of demonstrating how much of our economic activity can be opened up. And there's always this question of how do we return to some level of economic activity that's reasonable, that would sustain many of the jobs that we thought we could have or return to in the middle of the pandemic, how we can recover a lot of the jobs that we were lost already, and probably reimagine a new economy during the pandemic and afterwards. Of course, another dimension that really constrains the way that we think about economic recovery is that more economic recovery means more mobility, and more mobility means that we'll probably have more interactions between people. And the science, of course, behind the pandemic and COVID-19 is that more people interacting with one another raises or elevates the chances that we transmit the disease, especially aerially, through saliva and our breath. So that second dimension that we were tackling was how do we mitigate new infections in the context of more economic activity or more economic recovery. And finally, the last dimension, which I probably heard at the very beginning when Art was explaining the theme of part 1 and part 2. One aspect of it, of course, is building back better. And as you know, in this pandemic, there's a lot of opportunity really to rethink the way that we used to do things prior to the onset of COVID-19 in the Philippines. And the opportunity, of course, to be able to imagine new ways of living in the Philippines, in our cities and in the rural setting, the provinces. how is it that we can rebuild in a way that sort of takes advantage of the beneficial environmental effects, really, of slowing down the economy and getting people to stop moving, make them work from home, have less automobiles on the roads. Now that we're thinking of economic recovery, of course, we need to think about also how to be able to manage the environmental impact of recovering. So these three problems together, we thought this was sufficiently challenging enough to find a way to sort of look for a balance between all three. And the solution that we created based on these three areas of problematics was our app called Gideon. So here we go. This is the landing page of our wireframe. I do suggest for those of you who plan on any ideation process or joining data challenges, you start with a very simple wireframe. This is just created directly out of PowerPoint, but in a while I'll be sharing you some snippets of what the actual app looks like. So here's Gideon, its landing page. Gideon, of course, is short for Global Impact Detection from Emitted Light, Onset of COVID-19 and Nitrogen Dioxide. So of course, what makes it a NASA entry is the use of satellite data. If you noticed in Engineer Rosan's presentation, they were talking about satellite data as well. Our use of it was focused on data that we can extract on detecting nitrogen dioxide as a signature of fossil fuel burning, and emitted light, which is a nighttime indicator of economic activity. And using these things along with what we call on-the-ground data, we're able to put together what we call a traffic light system. So you see the red, yellow, and green lights, quote unquote. And the idea here was to be able to examine countries all over the world and to gauge on a risk and sustainability index or score on how well their economic recovery is coming along in relation to infection rates and to environmental impact. So again, the three problems that we were trying to tackle while we were ideating this solution. So what we had here basically is a score for the 5 countries that we examined in our demo. The objective, of course, was to be able to examine all countries around the world, and at a later stage, we'll be able to look at multiple cities and municipalities within a country in each of the countries that we're examining. So the Philippines, in our initial scoring, came up in the middle of the pack with a yellow light. Italy was very low, and Japan and Singapore seem to score very highly on at least the algorithm that we developed for this. The main variables, of course, for our risk and sustainability index were GDP change, COVID growth, pollution, and a lockdown index as a proxy for mobility. So we'll go through a bit of these things now, but I think the most basic things about this app was that we were trying to approach it in a way that we could deliver a solution for public policymakers, particularly government officials responding to the pandemic, and to be able to see, for example, how their interventions like ECQ, MECQ, GCQ, and the choices and the variables that go into their decisions to change the level of quarantine could reflect sort of the impact also on the rest of society on other factors such as the environment and infection rates. What makes this also, as I said earlier, a NASA app now is the use of night lights and nitrogen dioxide. We took the night lights from the VIRS instrument, so VIIRS, and we took nitrogen dioxide directly from Sentinel-5P. These weren't, of course, the only data sets that we were using. We sourced Google mobility data, which is for free right now and fully accessible for the length of the pandemic. We also have COVID infection data. There are many sources of this. For the competition, we used Johns Hopkins University. And as you saw, we ranked the countries based on high, moderate, and low risks. Some of you might have seen already the mobility data and played around with it. This is usually how we visualize Google mobility data. And what we have here is basically an overlay between mobility in different areas. And the bar graph in the background over here is the levels of, the daily infection rates in each of the countries. No? In this wireframe, of course, you won't be able to select different countries now, but in the app later on, you'll be able to see that. A sustainable and low risk recovery is something that's demonstrated by decreasing population incidents at home and increasing population incidents in workplaces and transport hubs and groceries, basically outside. No? So this pincer line graph is typical in many countries that had started in a lockdown, somewhere here, and then gradually mobility started increasing again, and then they start to meet towards the middle at 0, which represents pre-lockdown levels of mobility. And in this example, I have here, it's Italy. Italy had moved into very low levels of infection. Sorry, this should be Singapore. As Singapore moved into May, it increased its mobility, but its infection levels stayed very low, just above 0 for most of that month. And of course, the situation was a little different after May, but our competition was limited to the end of May. One other aspect of this app that we developed now was to create sort of a news sticker, which is, again, another data source, no? Where we're able to look at text data as an indicator also of sentiment and what are the concerns of people based on the news that's reported in each country. So apart from the hard numbers, no, ones and zeros, word or text data is quite important also in detecting whether or not there's something unusual happening in a situation or in a country. And it would be vital also to be able to put that together with numerical data in order to get a holistic view of what's happening in a country. Gideon, of course, was sort of promoted as an integrative solution. So we needed to leverage also the multiple data sources that were available to us. So one of the other things that we were able to do with satellite data was to build a model and to sort of predict how GDP growth rates would behave in the pandemic based on our indicators from space. So what you're seeing here for most of the countries that we were looking at was GDP growth as measured by the blue line and measured quarterly. And as you know, traditionally, this is a quarterly, this is reported quarterly in many countries now. And we were able to more or less predict also these levels using only 2 data sets, that's nightlight and nitrogen dioxide, up to the first quarter. And the models look pretty solid until the first quarter. And after that, of course, realizing that the lockdown is a very serious economic disruption. Even if the nightlight showed that there was more activity and as well as the nitrogen dioxide levels, no? GDP levels, of course, were very, very low in the second quarter when we eventually found this data. So we were very, very much off on this, but it does show some promise in being able to use satellite indicators as proxies also for economic activity on the ground. So this is definitely an area for future exploration for us. One other thing that we added, of course, was pollution, and nitrogen dioxide, as many of you probably know now, is already a good indicator of pollution. But we also added the ArcGIS API to give us another layer of pollution levels in every country. So what you're looking at here is Singapore and different areas of Singapore with their pollution levels as an additional layer of sort of getting a holistic view of what the pandemic situation is in Singapore based on environmental factors, infections, and economic activity. So I just wanted to say very briefly, that this is the team that we had behind Gideon, very talented people that some associates of ours, former associates and current associates with us in Cyralytics. And we also wanted to say that we're very proud that we're a proud supporter of women in data science. We know for a fact from our own experience and work that there are many, many, many talented women working in these fields already. And even in something that's relatively new, I mean, it's just a new term now, we call it data science. We do see a huge potential really for the leadership of women in this field. Our team, of course, I was leading the team, but of course it was not possible without the talents, of course, of our women on the team as well. And one other gentleman here, which is Oscar, who is also one of their colleagues from the University of Asia and the Pacific. So before I get into the web app now to share with you just a few reflections, I wanted to point out that satellite technology is, we're not lagging behind in this by any stretch. Of course, we're not the leaders worldwide, but you might have heard, of course, of the Philippine Space Agency, a very new agency under the DOST. You also know that the Philippines does have its own satellites in outer space, and part of the development, the hardware that goes into these satellites is homegrown. And UP, of course, and ASTI and PhilSA are very much engaged in the sector of building satellites. The data challenge, of course, demonstrates that there's some potential for Filipinos to be able to participate downstream, meaning after our satellites collect data, there's this open arena really for analyzing all of this feed that we get from satellites, not just our own, but from other countries as well. And maybe it's a little known fact, but the Philippines has taken podium finishes, like top prizes in the NASA Space Apps Challenge beginning 2018, last year in 2019, and again in 2020. So 3 years in a row, the Philippines has been winning these data challenges. And we're beginning to be recognized as a major source really of this ideation of new solutions that are crowdsourced. And the potential impact of that, of course, is to be able to create a new arena for data science where we're able to now participate in the space industry, particularly in the analysis of data. So I hope part of your takeaway, students of Caraga State University, is to be able to think of this also, that your participation in the many fields of science and engineering out there must include the space industry as well, as a way also of promoting what we just created, the newly instituted space agency for the country. There's so much work to be done in order to promote this in the Philippines. Last thing, of course, is the Data Challenge has a community, an ecosystem of volunteers and people who are very much engaged and devoted to facilitating these data challenges. And I'm not aware of what the volunteer communities look like down in Mindanao, especially in northern Visayan-speaking parts of Mindanao. But I do imagine that there's much potential to be able to bring together hobbyists, engineering students, data science students, and just to create these environments of ideation where you can create solutions for whatever it is really, wherever we're needed to create solutions, and where our homegrown talent of engineers and scientists can be able to make an impact in society or social impact. Of course, the Bangsamoro Data Challenge is just an invitation to all of you to sort of test also how some of the solutions, some of the ideas that you might have had can be used in a very real way and affect real societies, especially in Western Mindanao, in the Muslim region. So with that, I want to switch over to another screen here. This is the Gideon app. So let's just go over to my browser and go to Gideon. So for those of you who are looking at my screen, this is our demo for Gideon as it looks like now. And basically what we've done is create a dashboard, no? And I think Engineer Roseanne made a very great point to say that dashboards are very important to make our analysis communicable, to make it accessible to a larger audience, no? And we don't make these tools to be complicated and to wow people, not just, no, it's more importantly, we do these to be able to convey information. So what we have here is an analysis of the data sets that we were using for, here we go, for the Gideon app, no? So first graph, basically what we're looking at here is a visualization of mobility, which is the dark line or the dark blue line, and how that stacks up against COVID cases based on our Johns Hopkins University data. And one thing that we know in many cases, in many countries, is that as mobility started to increase, not surprisingly, daily infection rates started to spike, no? And we knew this tracking the pandemic as well here in the Philippines, no? You might have seen that in other countries, and you're certainly free to check our web app. I'll show you the link in a minute to see where our demo is. And the other visualization that we did, of course, was to track quarterly GDP growth rates and to see how that progressed over time. We know that there was a major dip in the first quarter of 2020. And of course, this was a predictive model. So we predicted an increase in the second quarter, which is wrong, no? But one of the ways that we tried to model this, no, was using night lights and nitrogen dioxide as a way of sort of explaining what we did exactly with that light, no? We broke it down into the RGB spectrum, or the red, green, blue spectra, and basically extracted the decimal values in order to approximate what the total score, quote unquote, for light is in a certain place at a given time, no? And that's how we modeled our economic data. There's some other things to look at here as well. We've also looked at each of the countries to see side by side what their scores are on the index. And the final score, of course, showed that we've ranked countries based on how they performed in each of the indicators in our risk sustainability model. Now, this is a new model already. We sort of adjusted it. The Philippines scored quite low in this new model. Earlier, we showed a yellow light for it, but we probably downgraded the Philippines now to a red light, or maybe a red light for sure, based on this scoring. To know more about this, of course, just come and visit the website on, let me just show you the link over here. It's opendata.org.ph and /Gideon_plus. And you can play around with our model over there. So with that, no, I think I'm going to reserve some analysis into the data sets if there are any questions on that later on. But I think that's basically everything that we wanted to share about Gideon and data challenges. I just want to thank again Caraga State University for inviting us, especially Engineer Georgine, Engineer Miriam, and Art for welcoming us today in this afternoon session. And of course, Engineer Roseanne for presenting side by side with me. Thanks very much, everyone.
All right, thank you, Sir Nick, and congratulations again for being a global awardee for best use of data during the NASA Apps COVID-19 Challenge. So there you have it. Again, if you have questions related to Sir Nick's presentation, kindly type it in the Q&A tab and he will be glad to answer it during the Q&A session. Please feel free again to share with us the things you learned from our last speaker. And as a review on the talk of Sir Nick, so he discussed to us about Gideon, which is an integrated public policy information portal that aims to measure the impact of COVID on various countries and its effect on economic and environmental terms. Also, the Project Gideon, or the Global Impact Detection Using Emitted Light, onset of COVID-19 and nitrogen dioxide, makes use of historical quarterly GDP, emitted light, which is for proxy variable income, onset of COVID-19 growth and environmental factors, which is the nitrogen dioxide content in a country, in order to predict the GDP values sooner. Okay, so I guess we have gained much information today, and I hope you'll join us up to the last part of this webinar. And to help you regain energy, let's have a 5-minute break before the Q&A session and panel discussion. So please come back after the short break.
Padayon sa paglayag.
We are now back. I hope you are still with us. And at this juncture, we are now going to take questions. Please be informed that we will have a time limit for the question and answer session and panel discussion. But we will try our best to accommodate as many questions as we can. And before I read the first question, let me invite again our speakers, Engineer Ramos and Sir Nick, to join us in the discussion. So I guess they are already here. So let's have the first question. So this question is for Engineer Rose and V. Ramos. Thank you and congratulations for developing trams. How many hospitals are you targeting to be included in the app? Was it hard to convince hospitals and what are the challenges? Ma'am Roseanne?
Thank you, Sir Art, for that. Okay, so for the first question in the first set, so we have officially submitted 48 target hospitals. So these are identified based on the set of the hospitals that were not contributing or initially contributing to the Department of Health's data drop. So this 48 are located within the National Capital Region, and then when our project was officially supported by DOST, we have experienced difficulties in contacting them. So at the end of the project, actually 16, just 16 of these 48 have registered and participated. So what we did so that other hospitals may also be catered by the application or the system, we extended our invitations to the other regions, so for the whole Philippines. So we have no actual target number for at national scale. So any hospital is welcome to participate in the project. Regarding the challenges, we have encountered some administrative and technical issues with this. So yung sa mga administrative po, other hospitals said that they were already giving information to DOH. So why duplicate or why replicate the information? Then some hospitals naman po, they said, can we get donations out of this? So they were expecting donations before the actual participation trams. So it's very difficult to address that kasi hindi naman po namin covered din yung magbigay ng donations directly to these hospitals. What we wanted to do is to help our planning agencies, for example, LGUs, na reach out sa mga hospitals na to by giving them the information. We've seen na kanya-kanya yung pagbigay ng information. Ibig sabihin, hindi wala tayong centralized na repository kung saan i-access natin yung mga needs ng hospitals na to. So that was what the main objective of TRAMS. And then we wanted to support DOH as well. Pero yun nga, we had difficulty contacting them and convincing them kasi they're asking for endorsement from the Department of Health. And then also, ang hirap kumuha po ng verified information ng hospitals. Some have no website at all. So, inisa-isa namin sila makontakin. It may be from email, landline, cellphone, and even Facebook. So, ito po yung mga challenges. Some of them already declined kasi they have no specific personnel or manpower to provide the data or to use trams sa kanilang updating. So I guess, and then I think last one, maybe, naghinder po sa kanila to join trams are data privacy issues. Ayaw nilang i-publish yung exact count and type of hospitals being managed sa area, lalo yung mga private hospitals. So what we did, provide them options na i-categorize na lang po yung supply level instead of hard numbers. And I think I answered the questions. That's 3 questions.
Thank you, Ma'am Engineer Ramos. So I believe you were able to overcome those challenges. So that's the most important thing. Okay, so shall we now proceed to the next question? This question again is for you, Engineer Rose and V. Ramos. So how is the data gathered from your sources in terms of percentage in response to the demand of the medical supplies needed?
Okay, thank you again, Sir Art. Yes, actually, we only gathered or requested data from hospitals, very limited information po, about the current supply and then yung specific total supplies nila na kailangan. So it's very subjective. And then also the rate of use nila. So that was all estimated. For example, if they have reported this week, tapos pag nagbago po siya in the succeeding weeks, those changes are incorporated as well in the system. Hindi namin compute exactly or accurately yung demand ng bawat supply because we were not able to get information about ilan yung mga taong gumagamit. Tapos ano po ba yung interval ng paggamit? It is daily or weekly. So yung demand na to, it's just estimates. So we reported yung supply level only and estimated time kung kailan pwede dapat i-replenish yung mga supplies. Let's say, yung target po ng hospital, 100, tapos kapag kumulang na po doon, below 20%, we are recommending na i-replenish na siya regardless of the demand. So, yun, to summarize, our data sets just provided estimates pagdating po sa demand.
All right, I hope it answered the question. Thank you again, Engineer Rose and Ramos. So let's move on to the next question. All right, so this time, this question is addressed to Mr. Nick Tobia. Gideon won the best use of data in the NASA Space at COVID-19 challenge. Congratulations again, sir. So how was the experience?
Thanks very much, Art, no, and for the question, no. I think winning the challenge was really thrilling. The challenge itself was, I think, like in most of these short data challenges, no, it's very nerve-wracking. You don't really have a lot of time, but it wasn't our first time to join a data challenge, no. So one of the tips that I could probably share with some of you, is to come prepared, know where you're going to get your data para when it's time to start the challenge, you're not, looking all over the internet. Saan ba makakahanap ng variable na ganito or that? So it's very useful really to have a bit of experience in joining these things, no. And I think for us, basically, winning it, of course, was something that we were very, very happy about. No? But I think there's also this calmness and knowing that we've done it before, we've experienced this before. No? And we were just happy that it was validated, the effort that we put into it by winning for the country, to put the Philippines on the podium, with 5 other global winners. So it made us feel very, very proud to represent the Philippines again.
Did you expect, sir, that you will receive the award?
Of course, we didn't expect, no. May konting, mukhang okay to. It's good enough to, if we didn't win national or make it to the finals, the global finals, no. So there's some levels before you get to the very top, no. So at least we felt that we had something good enough for the global finalists, which was a short list of 40. And yeah, I mean, there were 1,500 entries from around the world now. So I think getting to the top 40 was something that we thought was reasonable. Maybe we thought we could have done better than just top 40, of course. But, syempre, just put your best foot forward and see how it goes.
Yes, sir, because being able to represent the Philippines is already a great honor. How much more winning an award? All right, so thank you, Sir Nick. So thank you again, Sir Nick. So let's proceed to the next question. So again, this is for you, Sir Nick.
Okay.
That was a very informative and interesting presentation according to our participants. So can you share to us the strongest attributes of Gideon that made it a winner for best use of data in the NASA Space at COVID-19 challenge?
Right. Okay. So I think this is a good segue also into sort of getting you guys interested also in joining the next NASA Data Challenge, no, and other data challenges that are out there, like the BARM Virtual Data Challenge. I think one of the things that makes an app a really good app that would win a competition, it's more of being able to focus and bring together all the elements, especially the coding, for those of you who code for web dev, for example, and those of you who can do the analytics as well, no? To stitch it all together into a really great story. And you shouldn't forget that joining competitions like these is really storytelling. And in our case, as data professionals or students of data, you're telling a data story. So the elements of a good story should always come together, no? Like there's this problem, this challenge. It seems insurmountable. It seems like so many people are suffering, and then, but no, we think we have a way over this, to overcome this, and then you tell the story in the way that you tell, like read from a storybook as well, no? To make it compelling, to be able to use precise language as well. And of course, to be able to demonstrate, to communicate the tool that you create. So one of the things that we see, of course, is that many engineers are really brilliant coders, very great, excellent analysts, no? But then there's always that element where you're able to communicate it in a way that moves people. And you have to remember, no, that you're not competing before an algorithm, you're competing before human judges. So it really needs to be something that, moves their minds and moves their hearts as well, no? So the complete package, show them the data, tell a story, knock them dead, and win the challenge. So I think that was the best thing about the Gideon app, no? More than, you can probably look at the app and look under the hood, no? You can look at the code that we have underneath it. But I'll tell you now, the code doesn't make it a winning app. It's really the story that you tell.
Right, that sounds interesting and at the same time inspiring, Sir Nick. So I guess we still have several questions from our participants. So let's have the next question. So again, this is for you, Sir Nick. So can you explain more about Gideon's data inputs and methodology? I am very interested on how it can produce a fast, accurate forecasting that can help policymakers with lockdown-related decisions. And can you cite examples of these decisions?
Okay, so let's go straight into inputs and methodology. No, so on the method, really, what we were responding to was a challenge. So NASA has every year when they run the challenge, they'll give you several challenges to choose from. Okay, and for us, what we chose was the integrative solution challenge. And I think for everyone who joined that challenge, the main thing really was to be able to bring together multiple data sets in order to create an insight that's useful. But in this case, no, because it was a COVID challenge, something that's useful in our response to COVID, no. So the method, like the general method really was just to bring these things together in a coherent way, no. The data inputs, of course, I think the main thing is you start with the COVID data. And most people, they need to be able to, I mean, if you analyze all the visualizations that you can find online, my favorite would be ourworldindata.org. And that's also part of the inspiration for how to normalize data across hundreds of countries around the world. No? So we just set it at day 0 is when each country hit 30 cases. And that made it possible now to compare countries across the data set. No? So you start with some easy preparations with the data. Nothing too complicated, but just remember na every time you have a new data set, caveat lang, don't just jump into it and use it right away. No, there has to be some very clear logical thinking that goes into it. No, the other input that I want to highlight here is the use of nitrogen dioxide and night lights and how we color extracted this. No, so all those data sources are for free. You can access them, especially on Google Earth Engine. No, it's pretty straightforward. And with a little JavaScript coding, you can probably extract per pixel the value of these readings. No, and that will give you sort of an idea of what the levels are for night lights and for nitrogen dioxide. No, so you overlay that with the infection data. Mobility data is pretty straightforward. You can look at it. In fact, it's too clean already, you know, in Google data, not raw enough, but raw enough that you can still play with it. So so yeah, it's putting all of these joining tables. It's probably one skill that you use a lot when you do this. I'll go straight now to citing examples now. So fast, accurate forecasting. Remember, this wasn't a real-time app, no? So only the data that we had on hand. And at the time, that was the end of May, no? But one way that the policymakers could have used that data, of course, was to be able to see how mobility in a country is a factor or not a non-factor in infection levels, no? So I showed you a visualization of mobility as a line graph and overlaid with a bar graph on infections, and something as simple as that. No, you don't even need to be, you know, some high level engineer to put together a simple graph like that. It already tells a user, a policymaker who's probably not an engineer, no, na, oh, okay, if I let more people out of the house, these are the probable levels of infection that we're going to see, no, in the spikes. So it prepares you also, no, na, okay, this much economic activity will probably need this number of beds ready in order to absorb the new infections that we're anticipating. So that's how you'd probably use it. I think that's the best example of how to use that information. Yes, Art, that's it.
Thank you, Sir Nick. I hope our participants were able to grasp the information about data inputs and the methodology. Okay, so I guess we still have more questions from our participants. And this time, this question is addressed to Engineer Rose and V. Ramos. So far, TRAMS Plus is designed to be a country-level application. Can any hospital adopt it later on for their needs? And what would be the changes that need to be implemented if this is the case?
Yes, thank you, Sir Art. So, it was designed primarily actually for the National Capital Region. We extended it at a country level so that all hospitals can join as well. So any hospital can use trams as long as they have access to internet. If wala, we had created a SMS notification system for that. Challenge only is that kailangan ito yung subscription para they can also participate. Let's say they don't have internet, kailangan nila mag-share ng data, they can work offline. Yes, they can manage their own inventories. Tapos mas efficient din yung pag-manage kasi nga by using a interface, and then they can also access the records, the history logs they have provided in updating the information anytime. So pwedeng may option na online, may option din na offline. Then hindi na kailangan din mataas yung technical background ng user as long as they can understand yung input ng data, pag-edit ng data, and paggamit ng graphical user interface. So some changes, I think they don't need to access yung main interface every time na mag-update sila. If they wanted to use personal mismo interface, hindi siya maging interactive with other hospitals, they can use standalone interface, yung hospital user interface. Tapos, kapag naman gusto nyo mag-participate na meron tayong data analytics for all regions, magiging group or cluster yung analysis natin, pwede rin po yun. Pero individual naman yung pag-update nila sa inventory. So I guess convenient yun for the hospital. Tapos libre naman po yung paggamit, just register sa trams. Yung mga expenses is on the side of the project, yung pag-manage ng mga subscriptions. Pero yung paggamit po ng interface sa kanila, libre naman. So I think I answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Ramos, for answering that question. So let's proceed to the next question. Okay, so this time, this question is from Sir Alfredo Grandeza, and this is addressed to Sir Nick Tobia. So the question is, can you predict in the coming 6 to 10 months the impact that will affect our country? It does not need an accurate prediction, but maybe an estimate or calculation based on a trend. Sir Nick?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Alfredo. No, unfortunately, the app itself, no, was created just for the competition. No, in theory, we would have been able to make predictions further into the future. No, not just 1 quarter. 2 quarters would be enough to get 6 months forecast. No, but we also realized, no, na the caveat to it is we saw mistakes in the way that the model performed after the onset of the pandemic, no? And what we infer from that also is that it's we're not just looking at GDP growth data. It might be some more generic like economic activity indicator that we're looking at, no? So there's a weakness in the predictive dimension of the app. So our way forward right now is stepping away from forecasting GDP growth rates and replacing that with some other indicator, no, something more holistic, no, because so yeah, I mean, part of the science, of course, is admitting that okay, this doesn't work, this doesn't seem sensible, no, and it doesn't even matter if you win the global challenge. Kung mali yung ano, yung insight, and you can readily see it, no. Just be a good scientist and make the adjustments. So right now, no ability yet to forecast GDP growth rates 6 to 10 months from now, but certainly something more generic, we can start building towards that. I'm not able to give you a forecast right now about what it is, no, kasi we're not at that level yet of reworking Gideon. But yes, look forward to showing you guys updates in the future, especially after our interactions with the European Space Agency, which is supporting us with the data backbone behind the project and the facility to sort of analyze their space data, much like how UP-ASTI does this also. For those of you who are looking for a local counterpart that can process satellite data in a very rapid way, just a tip for people who want to use satellite data. UP-ASTI is the place where you can find supercomputers to help you with that, and very knowledgeable people who can certainly show you the way and how to do this.
All right, thank you, Sir Nick, for that honest answer, and we look forward to your future endeavors. Okay, so let's proceed to the next question. This is from Sir Daniel Mostrales. So this question again is for you, Sir Nick. Sweden has a surprising response to COVID-19 pandemic. That is, they did not enforce a lockdown. Can Gideon somehow validate or justify their action? Looks like not a restricting mobility allow early resilience to the pandemic.
Right, Daniel, thank you for the question, no? And Alfredo also earlier for the question as well. I think in the weighted score, no, or composite score, Sweden was pretty okay, no. And when, of course, you realize that even if we're using an algorithm like a weighted scoring system, no, in order to gauge these, no, in real life, when you're assessing a country, it's partly subjective also, no, and there are many opinions about how Sweden had performed in this pandemic, no. And especially when you compare them to their neighboring Nordic countries, no, I think Sweden would have been considered a catastrophe just by the number of casualties that they've had. And I think a closer look into that shows that most of their deaths, because they have an older population, no, were in homes for the aged. No? So that definitely is a weakness in their public policy response to the pandemic. No? But also, like we said, no, Gideon is a holistic way of understanding the impact of the pandemic. So even if they had fairly high levels of deaths, it's not as high as what it looks like worldwide, no? And put that side by side with the impact on their economy, you know, I mean, Europe, of course, hasn't had spectacular GDP growth rates, no? But Sweden held its own during this time, no? So I think generally you can look at it and say that with an economy that didn't flag as much as everyone else's did, with a reasonable number of casualties because of the pandemic, particularly because they're an aged population. And I think there are generally very low levels of pollution during and after the pandemic lockdown. I'd say Sweden sounds like a pretty good place to be in. Certainly much, much better than being in the United States right now. So yeah, thanks again for the question, Daniel. Very great, very insightful question.
All right, thank you, Sir Nick, for answering that question. So I guess we still have more questions from our participants. So again, we still have time, so you can still type your questions in the Q&A tab. All right, so we have here a question from Anonymous. Okay, so this question is addressed to Sir Nick. Gideon was designed for country-level forecasting. Can we use it at the local level? Example, regional, provincial, city, municipality, and how? And can it be used down to LGU level for purpose of formulation of public policy and decision making? Sir Nick?
Yeah. Excellent question again. No? So this one is, I think the great thing about satellite data, and I'm sure our friends from UP Engineering, no, can attest to this. No? Satellites, of course, cover almost every part of the planet, and it goes without saying that you can definitely get local level information or insights just on the data sets that we use from satellite methodologies. No? So Earth observation, of course, is littered with numerous instruments that we can exploit, no, to get local insight. So everything that I was talking about, no, night lights and nitrogen dioxide, those are just examples of satellite methodologies that you can certainly zero in to, let's say, Butuan and find out like what the levels are like in at the local level there. No? I think the crucial thing is getting economic data at the local level. No? So as you know, GDP is something that's measured nationally. If you had the patience to scour through the Philippine Statistics Authority data sets, most of them are in PDF. Huh? I do recommend that you do not be dissuaded or disheartened when you see something that's measured nationally. Right? So you should be able to exploit tools online that you're able to transform PDF tables into Excel sheets that are usable and analyzable. No? So don't feel like looking for local data, even if it's on, I don't know, like in Word document or PDF, that it's not usable. Like make sure that you exploit every possible resource. And that's where you'll probably find good local level data. No? On your second question, can it be used down to the LGU level for purpose of formulation of public policy and decision making? Absolutely. The end goal, of course, of Gideon was to be able not only to see countries and measure them using that traffic light system. No? What we wanted was a traffic light system for every major city and municipality in the Philippines. So definitely Butuan, Cagayan de Oro would have, Hinoa would have been captured in that. And I think the end goal would have been to come up with something much, much better than this ham-fisted GCQ, MCQ, MECQ sort of, tiers of lockdown if you had local level and very refined, granular local level insight. No, we wouldn't even have a scale of 4 quarantine levels. You'd have it like pinpoint accurate for each location. Yeah? And places where they've had like 0 infections, how can we put them on MECQ or MGCQ for that matter? No? Like 0 infections, dapat walang quarantine sa kanila. So it's something that it's mind-boggling, and then at the same time, I think we have to understand that in emergencies, there isn't a lot of time to wait for that local insight. No? So people need to respond quickly, and then sometimes it's not the best response. So we can forgive our government sometimes for these shortcomings.
Right, thank you, Sir Nick. So I guess Gideon can be, according to Sir Nick, so Gideon can be used down to the LGU level. Okay, so, and now we have a questions for all our speakers. So this is the question: what are the lessons learned during the development of Trams Plus and of Gideon? So who will answer first? I guess Engineer Ramos, ma'am.
Yes, hello, Mr. Art. Yes. Can you hear me? I think. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Thank you. I think I have problems with my connection. Anyway, during the development of trams, we've encountered several administrative challenges. No, so I think I'm still. I want to promote that collaborations with different agencies is very important. So yung system hindi naman nag-work na standalone na kami lang din yung magpo-provide ng data. So I think if we get the support from our hospitals and our agencies like the Department of Health, maganda yung magiging kalabasan din ng output. So it's very sad na konti lang kasi yung nag-participate at country level. Mas maganda po sana yung maging makukuha nating analysis sa data when they were giving voluntary information. So, yun po yung naging limitation. So, I'm saying is sana open sila sa collaboration. Tapos, they take the opportunity to use the system kasi naman ito para sa kanila. Mas magandang i-develop pa siya and open source, using open source datasets and software, ito na rin yung magiging trend natin later on for mga spatial analysis or spatial models. Like what Sir Nick said, yeah, daming pwede nating makreate na platforms. However, hindi siya magiging efficient kung hindi yung talagang i-utilize ng values or optimal by the expected users. So, yes, I think yung main lesson na encounter ko rin while developing the system. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Ma'am Roseanne. So what about you, Sir Nick?
I think, yeah, thank you for the question. I think the most important lesson before winning the award is that one of the things that you need to be able to focus on when developing something for a data challenge, is to be responsive. And I think most of the people who join these data challenges, it sounds so basic, na just respond to the problem specifically and then make the solution out of that. But then I think in the NASA challenge in particular, you're able to see what competitors are doing and you're able to see yung progress din nila, and I think one thing that's very clear in who's leading the pack is the one who's able to demonstrate along the way, that yung sa updates nila, they're able to show that okay, this new slide or this new photo looks like it fits the solution that answers exactly the challenge that we're responding to. So yeah, there are many nuances, of course, to the NASA Space Apps Challenge. I just do recommend that if you're planning to develop an app or a tool or solution, in that kind of environment. Practice really makes perfect, makes permanent, that is. So learn to use good habits when doing data challenges. I think one more lesson lang, Art, no? If I may, no? One lesson after developing Gideon is that you don't expect that the app that you create, no matter how brilliant you think you are, no, when you design these things, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make it to market. Like someone will buy you out, or someone will pay for your app. So this comes back to as scientists, as engineers, you also need to be politicians, in the sense that you need to be able to sell your app. You need to talk your way through conversations with funders, with incubators, with government officials, no? And you need to be able to swallow rejection, because again, no, it doesn't matter if you think you're brilliant. It doesn't matter if you won an award in a data challenge, no? Parang on the ground, when you're toe-to-toe with people who have the money that may or may not go into your app, the development of your app, you need to be smooth, you need to be articulate, you need to be on point. And yeah, you need to have grit also. So don't lose hope so easily if it doesn't work out right away. Many of the things that went into Gideon were technologies we took from other apps before, and of course, not everything works out, but some technologies work, and then they find their way forward into solutions that make sense, like Gideon. And I think part of the future of Gideon, of course, is to imagine it partly as something that stays intact with some integrity. And the other part is, okay, that didn't work 100% as we wanted to, but maybe some of the tech can be used for something even better in the future. So it's always this open mind, open perspective.
Right, so thank you, sir. And I hope our participants also learned from the lessons learned during the development of the Trams Plus and Gideon. So we only have 3 remaining questions left. So let's now proceed to the next question. So again, this question is for all the speakers. Speaking about sustainability, what are sustainability plans for Trams Plus and Gideon, and how can the public help? And also, have you found adapters for Gideon and Trams Plus? So I guess Sir Nick will answer first.
There we go. Okay, sustainability, no? So part of the development is to take advantage, as I said earlier, no, of the ESA, or European Space Agency facility, no. So it's more scale up than sustainability, but we foresee that something that can actually successfully move to global scale, no, in terms of analyzing different countries in the pandemic and even after the pandemic, no, naturally leads to sustainability of the application. So our goal in the ESA facility is to be able to create a new layer on their dashboard, no? So they have their own visualization of different layers of data. And hopefully we'll be able to contribute to that by, a Filipino-made specific layer in ESA's facility. That would be really, really great if we can score that, no. And that, I think that's built in already. Sustainability, meaning the usage of our analysis of countries based on the environment and infection rates, no. Very useful for looking at how countries respond to medical emergencies, in epidemics, pandemics, even natural calamities. No? We hope that we can use this eventually in other domains. No? The public can certainly help directly or indirectly. I think joining data challenges would be one thing, and getting to know the community can definitely help us find more allies. And the other thing, of course, is for those of you who are interested in showcasing your talents, also interning with us, just look for our website, no, Serolytics.com, no, and we're always looking for young, talented, motivated people from all over the country and the world, no, to join us in our social impact mission. So, yeah, just shoot us an email. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, sir. So, Roseanne.
There. Yes, thank you, Sir Art, again. About sustainability, we had previous discussions within the training center, actually with my co-faculty, with my colleagues in the department. So no definite plans yet, but ayun nga, we're trying to consolidate all apps produced during the pandemic and even yung mga previous projects rin sa training center. So we wanted to create a single platform for that para madali rin yung record keeping and yung use ng applications kung nasa isang single platform lang. And recently, we just had conversations and meeting with UNDP kung paano po nila i-adapt yung trams into their system. I think the project is about connecting the platform to the manufacturers and suppliers of PPEs. So wala rin pong definite for that, but the institution have been helping us connect with these agencies para later on, magamit po talaga yung trams. Pero for now, yung UPTC AGP po yung nag-handle na. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sir Ma'am Rose Ann, and also Sir Nick again. So I guess we are now down to our last question from Sir Alfredo Grandiza. So this is a general question that any of our speakers now can answer. Okay, so does the Department of Health include in their researches the different approaches in response to fight against COVID-19 and the topics here like the faster, trams, Gideon, and the like? Are our DOH and IATF aware of these very informative and helpful programs or projects done by our speakers? Okay, so we'll answer first, Sir Nick, maybe.
I can go ahead and answer this. Roseanne, if you don't mind, no? Sige lang. So I think if the Department of Health includes in their own research, no, different approaches that are out there, I think FASTER is definitely an agency that's involved more closely with the government in this, no? But remember, part of the problem really when the pandemic started was that there are too many people who have some knowledge of statistics and graphing, and you know, they come out and they come out and present themselves like they know epidemiology, no? And you might have seen early in the pandemic, I suppose March, maybe April and May, no? There are so many articles coming out, and all these people who have bright ideas of this is what it's going to be like, and that's what it's going to be like, no? The way that we saw this situation was that there's a potential now for an ethical dilemma. Like if you do your own science, do you need to have it peer reviewed first before you announce this? Or do you take advantage of Facebook and Twitter to be able to communicate as quickly as possible what you've done on your computer, no? And at the risk of misleading the public, you know, I mean, counterbalanced by, oh, but we can get this information out there as fast as we can. No? I think the lesson that we learn here is that there really needs to be a community that works together, even if they don't agree on everything. No? That ideas can be challenged, they can be presented and challenged against one another. No? So there has to be that community. I think eventually the health community had got into that. I do want to say also that what worked also in this sphere, no, was putting them side by side. And there was one by Philippine Society of Health Professionals of the Philippines, I think, PSPHP, where that's what they did exactly. They put FASTER side by side with so many other laboratories that were doing analysis. And just by putting them, all the models next to each other, no, people are exposed. Now you have to show what your assumptions are. You have to show like, how many infections did you start off with in your model, as opposed to, you know, someone who started with 0, and then be able to demonstrate that, okay, this model is more useful in this situation. FASTER's model will probably be more useful in if these were the conditions. And we're just more transparent with, you know, the way that we do science, no. So I think again, Art, no, this goes back to being politically savvy Just because we're doing science doesn't mean that everyone's going to swallow what we do and accept it, no? Kasi math yan eh. Or the numbers speak for themselves. So you need to be able to position yourselves, act ethically, learn to collaborate, learn to challenge when it's time to challenge. And I think eventually we've done a great job of facilitating that. We certainly could have done a lot better, no? So yeah, I don't think DOH and IATF were aware of everything, but it's incumbent on us also as scientists or part of the community of data professionals to position ourselves also in an ethical way, so that we can make our own impact at the same time in a way that's very beneficial to the public.
Okay, thank you, sir. So indeed, we really need to learn to collaborate. So what about you, Ma'am Roseanne?
Sir. Yes, sir. Actually, para sa Sir Nick, no, at the start, hindi rin ganun fully aware din yung DOH. But then, for the case of trams, before DOST have approved the project, we had to undergo several meetings and coordinations with DOH then, and other agencies or organizations doing similar work. So, umpisa, they've been open, kaya lang, eventually, they told us na meron pala silang ipaprocure na system similar to trams. So, they declined na gamitin yung trams. We're aware ang sa dulo kasi some of the officials contacted us kung paano i-share ng data. Kasi specifically po, with thinking machines. So, we have consulted several medical professionals, mga doctors rin po din DOH, kung paano rin namin ipe-present yung datasets namin para maging credible siya. Kasi we're not medical doctors or scientists na related sa health. However, alam namin na kailangan i-report ng maayos yung mga data na to. So, some basis, for example, yung pagka-categorize and pagka-compute ng mga supply levels, DOH members or personnel have suggested and recommended yung proper way kung paano i-compute ng mga to. Hindi man nila kami in-endorse sa dulo, but I appreciate tinulungan po nila kami kung paano i-calculate or i-analyze yung data before publishing. So, I'm thankful though they did not endorse us, pero some hospitals are very supportive as well, kahit na nakita nila na may mga gaps din. So, it's politically driven, may mga administrative issues lang. But on our side, Trams has delivered, I think, yung tool na kailangan. So, if college wanted to use it, they're very much welcome. Kung ayaw naman, there are other agencies naman na nagko-contact sa amin. So, like UST and UNDP. So, I guess for the public naman, open yung platform. Ngayon, we're just working on some technical difficulties like yung mga subscription na putol na rin. But we're trying to maintain the system para hindi po maging masayang or hindi siya basta ma-shelf out lang para magamit rin po ng ibang agencies aside from DOH. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ma'am Roseanne and Sir Nick again. So I guess we don't have questions left. So it looks like we answered all the questions from the participants. So, but if you have questions we didn't get to today or think of new questions, just message the SciTech for Dev Forum Facebook page or the CCGeo Facebook page, and we'll try our best to reach out to the speakers so we can get their answers and we should then forward it to you. So again, to our speakers, Engineer Ramos and Sir Nick, do you have final thoughts, takeaways, or closing statements, or is there anything else you would like to mention before ending this question and answer session? And can you please also provide your contact details in the chat box? So, Ma'am Rose.
Yes, sir. Sir, you can contact us through email. So I think I've written it as well sa chat trams.upd@up.edu.ph, or you can email me personally, rvramos@up.edu.ph, or through our Facebook page. Just search for trans project. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And also, are you open for collaboration, and how can we collaborate? Ma'am Rose Ann?
Yes, sir. Opo. We welcome collaborators. So, please contact us sa email. Mag-respond po kami as soon as possible. And you can set meetings, online meetings with us para mas explain natin ng detail yung mga gusto nyong gawin. To customize apps or to adapt apps on your own inventories or system. Thank you.
Right, thank you once again, Engineer Rose and Ramos. So it's your turn, Sir Nick.
Yeah, final thoughts, no? I think especially for the students who've been present throughout the different presentations, the different sessions, no? You can see all these really great ideas that are homegrown, gawa ng Pinoy. I think one thing I want to add to all of that really is think globally, guys. Meaning to say, wag lang tayo gagawa na app para lang sa Pilipinas or local. Of course, we want local insights to help us, no. But if you can make a global app that gives you local insight all over the world, that would be something really, really special, no. So don't put an automatic limit on the impact that you think you want to make with the tool, the solution, or the app that you're developing, no. Always look outward also and position ourselves or position the country in a way that we can make the strongest impact internationally as well. No? So of course, as I said earlier, we're open to collaborations. For those of you who want to know more about our data analytics social impact company, just visit us. It's in the chat already. It's www.cyrolytics.com, and you can email me directly as well. My email is just there in the chat. No, so looking forward to either seeing some of you in data challenges or finding your email in our inbox, and hopefully there'll be something that we can do together. We have many projects in social impact, not just for COVID, of course. And I hope that you'll find our portfolio very interesting also if you want to intern with us. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Sir Nick Tobia, for that message. So once again, thank you to our speakers for your effort and sharing your knowledge with us. So participants, let's give them a virtual applause. So I guess at this point, we will be giving certificates to the speakers in gratitude for their efforts. So let me read to you the citation. Right, so certificate of recognition. This certificate is awarded to Engineer Rose Ann V. Ramos, Assistant Professor, Department of Geodetic Engineering, University of the Philippines, Diliman, in grateful acknowledgement and sincere appreciation for the great contribution as a resource speaker of the responsive and intelligent suppression of COVID-19 and its societal impacts using spatial technologies or resist COVID-19 webinar part 2 organized by the Caraga Center for Geo-informatics, Caraga State University, and held via Zoom and Facebook Live on October 19, 2020. Given on the 19th day of October 2020 at Caraga State University during the celebration of Science and Technology for Development or SciTech for Dev 2020 Forum. Signed, Engineer Jojen R. Santillan, Director of CCGeo, and Dr. Rowena P. Varela, the Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Extension. And another certificate of recognition is given to Mr. Nick Tobia, Senior Consultant for Social Impact Analytics Research Services. Once again, thank you to our excellent speakers, and we look forward to more engaging and interactive activities with you. And now to officially close this two-part webinar, let us all welcome the Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Extension of Caraga State University, Dr. Rowena P. Varela.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am.
It was a very, very nice webinar. So since this is now our closing time for the series, so I will just give a short written closing remarks. So to the participants of this Resist COVID-19 webinar from the different regions in the Philippines and from abroad, the resource persons we have here with us today, Engineer Rusian Ramos, who shared about RAMs, and Mr. Nick Tubia, who talked about Gideon. The actors in organizing this webinar, led by engineers Eugene Santillan and Miriam Santillan. Good afternoon, everyone. The SciTech for Dev, or short for Science and Technology for Development, is an annual forum organized by the Caraga State University as a venue where the key stakeholders meet and exchange knowledge on the use of science and technology for inclusive and sustainable development. This year's theme is especially designed to fit to the demand of time and the challenges posed by the COVID-19. The theme is Navigating the New Normal, #Padayon sa Paglambo, which means onward to development, and Bugsay pa More, which means sail on. This year's format of conducting the SciTech for Dev Forum is quite different because we have started to adapt to the new normal. And so we're holding a series of events under the umbrella of the SciTech for Dev Forum, scheduled since September 15, and we will be holding events until October 31, 2020 using the online platform. So we opened this SciTech for Dev Forum on September 15, and this one is, I think, the 10th in the series. I am so excited with this event because this definitely can encourage more interest in data analytics in relation to forecasting the distribution of COVID-19, mapping the movement of supplies and logistics, particularly with the restrictions due to the quarantine protocols. I look forward for more interest in research and innovation in these areas. Data analytics have become a part of us, as every day we are looking at information about COVID-19 distribution at the global level, national level, and even at the regional and local levels. It has become a part of one's daily routine to check on the climate also, because every day we are provided with this information via the SMS or in the social media like Facebook. In this webinar, we have listened to our speakers presenting their work about analyzing the trends of COVID-19 spread. We sort of got a glimpse on how statisticians and mathematicians utilize data analytics in creating models to forecast COVID distribution in the various regions in the Philippines, the first of the series. Today, we learned some more as more information about data analytics in relation to economic forecast are shared to us. There are just too many areas of research and innovation waiting for us to explore. We are proud, therefore, to host this webinar series, and we look forward to actual research programs and projects on the application of data analytics in space technology, such that we can provide science-based information and solutions to planners and policymakers and push forward regional and local development. We are very fortunate to have with us these highly respected and globally competitive young researchers and innovators. Thank you very much, Engineer Rusian Ramos and Mr. Nick Tubia, for giving us some insights, very helpful insights. We are very grateful to you. Thank you very much, and mabuhay to all of us.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Rowena P. Varela. So we are also looking forward to more engaging and insightful activities for the sustainable development of our region and beyond. All right, so just a short reminder to our participants, your certificate of participation will be given in the next few days. You just need to ensure that you accomplish both the attendance sheets and evaluation form. So I would like to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. I hope you learned something from our speakers. And at this point, let me inform our FB Live participants that the live stream officially ends here. So goodbye for now and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.